Great. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming along today. It's great to be here. It's great to be invited to talk about the world of food and drink and to talk about food service. It would have been nice to have been here in better circumstances, but we are where we are in the current situation. And it's really great to be here to be able to talk to everybody on the chat about the world of food service. So I think it's really good to have people here from different backgrounds. I think there's brands on this video from sort of pre-revenue startup right up to multi-million-pound turnover businesses. So that's really good to see a mix of brands here wanting to know more about food service. So as Chloe said, my expertise really lies in the food service channel, and today's webinar is going to be based around that and based around the food and drink market. I'll be looking to outline the best way to build a plan for food service, how to implement this, and how to make these listings work for you. So our expertise here at Visionary Group lies across a number of areas. So if you did have any questions on any other parts of the world of food and drink, so if you needed any support on retail or marketing, social media operations, please contact me after, and I'd be more than happy to put you in touch with my colleagues who look after that area. So food service in its current format really has been hit by the current health crisis, with so many sites from coffee shops and schools to gyms and universities, from suppliers and distributors. We've really seen a hit to our industry. There are suppliers and distributors who have seen a 85–90% drop in forecasted sales, and that's something that we could just never have predicted at the start of this year. So the work that myself and our food service team have been doing is to basically be supporting brands through this, whether that's brands that we were already working with or brands who have sought our expertise and guidance since the health crisis has started. What we're doing really is pressing that reset button for brands. We are having to come up against the situation we're in, and we're working with those brands to help write their food service strategies, and really just to make the most of the situation we're in. It's a time to be able to sit down and to be able to map out the world of food service, where your brand fits, and really how you can come out of this crisis into autumn, winter with a bang. So I've got a presentation now that I'm going to run through. And the presentation really takes a pathway through the world of food service. I'll start off by just giving a little bit of background about what the world of food service is, in case people don't know. I'll move into really developing that food service strategy. I'll move into talk a little bit about some of the major players within the world of food service, and then also how to get your brand seen and heard by them as well. If you have any burning questions throughout, please pop them into the chat function. We will have a 10 to 15 minute Q&A at the end, so if the questions can wait, great. But if it's a question about a specific topic that I'm talking about at any point during this, then please feel free to put that into the function. There we go. So I gave you a little bit of a background about Visionary. As I said, we're a team who work with everything from startups and SMEs right through to multi-billion-pound turnover businesses in terms of supporting those businesses in their food and drink journey. My role specifically is in the world of food service. So I've worked for everything from blue chip brands through to smaller brands. And since working at Visionary Food Solutions, I've worked with over 100 brands to help write their food service strategies and to launch them into the world of food service. So what is food service? So quite a lot of food and drink brands have got that expertise in retail and want to focus on the world of retail and have that interest to understand what the world of food service is. Well, food service or out of home or the catering industry is really any food and drink that's being consumed outside of the home. So whether that's in the world of travel and leisure, whether that's in a school, college, university, hospital, whether that's coffee shops, hotels, restaurants, anytime that you're consuming food and drink outside of the home, there's probably a food service delivery system that's got that food and drink to that point. Obviously a little bit less in the current situation, but it plays a major role in the UK industry, not just in the world of food and drink, but in the industry as a whole. £57 billion industry for the UK, and a considerable market. And, it indicates why the hospitality industry in its current format, in the current crisis, has taken such a hit. There's over 350,000 outlets in the world of food service, and a huge opportunity for brands who want to get into this space to really identify where their brand fits and understand where those opportunities are for them. So why supply into food service? Well, it's distribution of your product into consumers' hands. I mean, that ends up being strong brand visibility. So if somebody's out and they're at a gym or a coffee shop or a university retail outlet and they see a product, it's getting that product into people's heads, and they are generally consumers that may go and research and understand more about the product, may see it in retail and want to purchase it there as well, may go to online shops after a positive experience and purchase through the direct-to-consumer route. So food service is a great channel in the world of food and drink to be able to get your product into consumers' hands. Generically, not always, but sometimes in the world of food service compared to retail, you can get those quicker wins. So it gives you the opportunity to be able to focus on distribution of your product, to be able to get some cash revenue and income from the world of food and drink. As many of you will know, retail discussions can significantly take longer than food service discussions. And if you're building an entire food and drink strategy for your brand and you're looking at the world of retail, the world of export, the world of direct consumer, the world of food service generically is where you may be able to get some of those quicker wins for your business. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of distributors throughout the UK, and there are distributors to suit your needs. So if you're a snack brand or you're a drink brand, there will be distributors that just do snacks. There'll be distributors that just do drinks. There'll be distributors that do all sorts of products that we'll come on to in a bit. So you're able to look at the market and find a distributor that suits your needs, as well as a distributor looking to you and being interested in the products that you've got there as well. Distributors and food service market, it's a really innovative space. You often see first to market products coming into food service often before retail these days. And the food service market is a great place to be able to launch a brand. You find that distributors are competing to be able to get a brand first. They want to be seen as an innovative distributor supplying their customers with new and exciting products. So if you've got an innovative product in your category, often people think you need to be more established to work in food service. It really doesn't work like that anymore. If you're getting your proposition right and you've got the product right, food service absolutely can be a market for you to play in. Now, this is a really good table to be able to showcase what the out-of-home market is. This is a table pulled together by the Federation of Wholesale Distributors, and sort of adds to the complexity and the maze that is the world of food service, but actually breaks it down in a really good way. So as sort of earlier when I started the presentation, talked about the different sectors that there are in the world of food service. This really is that broken down. This actually goes into sectors. It actually then breaks that down into subsectors as well. Now, this is going to be one of the most important documents for you in terms of building your food service strategy, because this really needs to be the first place that you need to start. What you need to be thinking about is right, I've got a product, whether it's a snack or a drink or a frozen product or a chilled or ambient dairy product, whatever that product is, this table will allow you to go, right, where does my product fit into the food service market? So I think my product fits really well into restaurants, but actually I don't think there's a fantastic fit for the world of healthcare and education because of the cost involved. So this really allows you to map out the world of food service for you. So let's just pick restaurants for an example. 63,000 opportunities there within the food and drink market for your product. What I would even recommend one step further from here is breaking that down into the subsectors and going, okay, I don't think my product's suitable for fast food, but actually for independent restaurants and for service-led restaurants and for fine dining, I think I've got a really good product for that sector. What I would then say is, once you've picked those subsectors, whether that's fine dining or stadiums or airports, map out the opportunities within that as well. So who are the top targets that I want to look at within the fine dining restaurant space? Well, I'd be really interested in speaking to Soho House, or I'd be really interested in speaking to Chiltern Firehouse, or premium restaurants, whether independent or chain. What that then allows you to do as part of your food service strategy is you've now identified the sectors that you want to work in, you've identified the subsectors that you want to work in, and you've actually highlighted whether it's 5, 10 or 15 key customers that you need to go after within those subsectors as well. All of a sudden, you're now starting to map out your food service strategy. You're starting to identify where you want to play, where your products can fit, and actually specific customers that you could approach and target to be able to get your product into. So in terms of building that food service strategy, this is a really key document in terms of just breaking food service down into manageable chunks. It's the only way that you can go after food service unless you've got a team of 100 or 150 who can take a subsector each and really go after it. The only way to do this is to break it down into manageable chunks and really understand, right, this is where I want to start and this is where I want to play. What I've done throughout this presentation, and I'm more than happy to share this with people after, is just highlighted some interactive sessions. So not something for us to do now, but just something for you to do as you're maybe going through this later, building your food service strategy or mapping out your food service journey, is just highlighted some interactive pages just to get you thinking on the way through this. And, you know, this is absolutely one of those times to sit down and think, right, where do I fit within that sector space? So just a little prompt for you for after if you are going to use this document to help aid your food service strategy building. So who are the key players within the food service market? It would be impossible, and certainly within the 45 minutes to an hour we've got, to go through all of the key players. And there are a lot more players than this. There are distributors for specific needs who supply specific sectors or subsectors, or just supply NHS, for example. But what I've done here is highlighted some of the larger distributors, some of the distributors that I've worked with very closely and I know are taking on startups and SME businesses. So you may have heard of some of these already, but just a quick run through in terms of who they are and what they do. So we'll start with one of the largest national distributors in the UK, Bidfood. They've changed names a few times over the past few years, so you may know them as 3663 or it's Bidfest, but this is Bidfood. They are based in Slough, but are a national distributor with a number of depots throughout the UK. They're £2.5 billion turnover business and really list and stock all products available in the food service market, including food and non-food products. So whether your product is ambient, chilled, frozen, fresh, poultry, whether that's produce, champagne, wine, beer, gin, non-food catering equipment, Bidfood are a fantastic distributor to be able to get that product into the marketplace. They're a very innovative distributor. They have their own team of chefs who are working with customers all the time to present new ideas. So a fantastic opportunity to include as part of your plan if you're thinking about which distributors that you may fit into. Another one is BB Foodservice. Again, have a few depots throughout the UK and significant turnover. They cover a number of products. Generically, they've taken more established products, but recently have really started to branch out and have won some pretty exciting contracts within the likes of NHS and universities where they're supplying innovative products. Again, like I said, they cover a wide range basis in terms of that space. We'll now move on to Booker. You may know Booker because of their merger with Tesco recently. It was a pretty big acquisition in the world of food and drink. Again, they cover a wide range of products and will supply the whole of the market. So if you really have any product where you think there's a fit, Booker Group will be a good target opportunity to be able to look at in terms of the food service market. Blakemore Wholesale, again, a really innovative distributor, not as big as some of the ones we've just talked about, but they do cover a wide range of products and have won some pretty exciting contracts over the past few years and do a lot of supply into places like coffee shops and country parks and schools and colleges and universities. So if you've got a product that you think works in that space, take a look at their website. They're definitely a distributor to consider for yourselves there. Alongside Bidfood, probably the other dominant national distributor throughout the UK is Brakes Foodservice. They were Brakes Brothers that you may have heard of in the past. They have their head office in Ashford in Kent, and again cover a wide range of products. They have major contracts throughout hotel, restaurants, coffee shops, healthcare. They do a lot of supply into the major hotel groups such as Hilton. So, you know, again, if you're looking at larger opportunities and have a bit of a national picture, then they're a really strong distributor to look at. Now, if you've got a product that has some regionality to it and you're a little bit scared and a little bit overwhelmed by the national distribution picture, then Caterforce Group and Country Range Group are two distributors that are really worth talking about here. So Caterforce are a national body who encompass 7 regional distributors. So they've got one in Scotland, Ireland, North East, North West, Midlands, South and Wales. So if you're in one of those regional groups, they're a fantastic distribution group to be able to speak to. Foodservice still holds a lot of provenance with regionality. So if you've got a regional product that holds some real provenance within your local area, speak to a local distributor. If you're also not really wanting to look at the national picture at the moment, although Bidfood, Breaks and the other distributors do also operate on a regional basis, in terms of real regional specialists, I would say Caterforce and Country Range are good to look at. There's not really too much difference between them. Country Range have 13 members, 13 distributors within their group, and Caterforce have 7. Take a look at their websites. It's really down to regionality and if they've got a distributor in your area. Like I said, Foodservice still holds a huge amount of weight with local and regional products, so that could be a really good opportunity for you there as well. So just a bit of information really about how the world of supply works within food service. A lot of people ask me questions about, so if I've got a product and I'm listed in a distributor, but I win a coffee shop, am I expected to get that product to the coffee shop? So the normal way that the world of food service works, you'll continue to manufacture your product. So whether you manufacture that yourself or it's a contract manufactured product, you are obviously responsible there for manufacturing the product. You will then be expected to distribute that to the wholesaler that you've won. There are occasions, although they are getting less and less, where distributors may backhaul and pick products up off you, but 95% of the time you'll be expected to get that product to the distributor. What that distributor will then do is they will store that product within their warehouses, they'll consolidate that stock and they'll move it around the country. So for example, if it's Bidfood and you're delivering the product into Slough, they'll get that product out to their Chepstow depot, to their Gateshead depot, to their Edinburgh depot and pass that stock throughout the country. There may be additional costs for you that are attached to that. They're not a lot, but it's worth, as you're building your pricing and your commercial structure for food service, just asking the distributor what those additional costs would be, so you can make sure that you're not driving your margin down too far, that you are looking at that. Once that stock's with the distributor, the out-of-home customer can then place an order. So if that's a coffee shop supplied by Bidfood or a gym supplied by Breaks, for example, that order then comes directly into the distributor, not into yourself. The distributor then ships that to the customer and it's sold on shelf. So this is just a sort of quick and light way to understand how that supply route works. Some of the more established brands here will obviously know this, but a lot of the early stage or pre-revenue startups that we work with, this is a really good diagram to be able to break that down step by step for them. The process. So we've obviously gone over the world of food service in terms of structure. We've gone over how to build that strategy, what to do in terms of identifying the sectors and subsectors and potential customers and saying, right, this is where I think I can play. We've then gone over some of the distributors. As I said, there are a lot more distributors than that. There are distributors all across the UK. There are distributors that just cover certain towns or cities or regions or counties, and there are distributors that are national. You want to make sure that you're working with a distributor that is right for you. That's so important because it's a two-way relationship. It's going to be a partnership. So when you're sitting down and building your food service strategy, make sure that you're identifying which distributors I think I want to work in. There really isn't a better tool than Google to be able to search for different distributors. I've given you some, but go onto their websites and just start to see, right, is there a fit for this? Are they supplying the sort of customers that I want to supply? Are they listing the sort of products that I've got? Are they passionate about the category I'm in, whether that's jams and chutneys or drinks or snacks or hot drinks? Do they seem a specialist within that space? You need to make sure they're the right distributor for you, and that all comes down to point 1 and 2 there. Once you've identified your sectors and subsectors and then potential distributors that you want to work with, it's really about building that initial proposition. I think the old days of putting an email to a buyer with a few lines, it's sort of dead in the water, really. Speaking to some food service buyers recently, they can be getting 150, 200 emails a week from potential brands and suppliers who want to work with them. What's making you stand out? What's putting you in that 5% that's going to make them open that email and go, this is a brand that I really want to work with in in the food service space. And that's all about building your initial proposition. It is a succinct 4 or 5 page PowerPoint presentation in terms of, this is who we are, this is what we do, here's our journey. Everybody in food service loves a point of difference, loves to hear the journey that you've been on. And I'm sure many of you have been on a journey to get to where you are today, launching your product into the food and drink market. Building that proposition around who you are, what your brand is, what your story is, why you're different to what already exists in the marketplace. Make it bespoke for the distributor or the customer that you're sending it to. Here's why I think we fit for Caterforce, Country Range, Bidfood Breaks, David Lloyd Gyms, NHS, Hilton, Marriott. Here's why I think we fit for you. Just adding that small piece of bespoke information into these presentations makes all the difference. If there's a procurement manager or a buyer that's seeing a lot of this information every day, emails and presentations, just that little bit of a bespoke twist on what you're putting across really makes all the difference for them. It almost puts your product in their mindset straight away. Right, they've looked at our product range, they understand us as a customer or as a distributor. It's really good to read that this is why they fit into our business. That's a really important part of building this 4 or 5 page simple PowerPoint presentation or PDF document proposition to put over to them. Food service is an extremely competitive marketplace. It's a competitive marketplace from a supplier's point of view, from a distributor's point of view. And what will make a distributor's life a lot easier is if you are taking customer interest to them. This is such an important part of the food service world. Times have drastically changed. There are distributors that may have 30 or 40,000 products stored in their warehouse. What really helps put that initial proposition into the next level, putting you in that 1% of brands that are going to really shine for the buyer, is, can you take customer interest? Have you gone to a few coffee shops and universities, restaurants, gyms, healthcare sites, hospitals, and got interest for your product? If you can take the distributor some volume, if you can take a distributor, customers that are ready to go to purchase your product, that's going to take a little bit of weight off them. It takes a little bit of the risk off them to go, okay, this is a product that I think is really going to work for me. This is a product where we've already got some forecasted volume ready to go. It's less of a risk for me as a food service buyer. Build that customer interest into point 3. Build that customer interest into the initial proposition. You're then getting a really strong introduction of your brand. It's personal, it's bespoke, it has customer interest, it tells your story, it shouts about why you're different. This just puts you into a different ball game compared to a large number of other brands that are coming across their desk all day, every day. And then really point 5 and point 6 speaks for itself, but it's contacting the buying team, contacting the buyer, and just getting their initial views of your brand. There's no magic solution to make a buyer want your product, but this is going to put you in that best stead in terms of a simple process to have in front of you here to work through. Like I said earlier, about just giving you a few sort of key points to think about if you're looking at this later on. I have done a whole slide on this customer interest piece because I really think it's a point that can't be underestimated, how important going to distributors with customer interest is. It really does put your brand at the next level. Whether that's a local customer, it's a national customer, it's showing them that there's interest in your product and there's opportunities to take to them straight away. So that's really just there for you to jog your memory on how important that opportunity is. Are you ready to launch? So a lot of brands that I work with in their very early stages think they have everything ready to launch into the world of food service. It's a very different world to retail. It's a very different world to convenience. It's a very different world to spaces that people may have worked in before. And I really break this down into 2 chunks. There are a lot more questions that could be asked. I put some at the end of this that we'll run through at the end as well. But just some initial points to think about to make sure you're ready to launch into the world of food service. Have you thought about your pack size? Pack sizes in retail and food service can be very different. So, are you looking at opportunities for catering size packs or bulk packs? If you're selling a snack or a drink, are you doing it in packs of 12 or 18 or 24 to make sure that it's as convenient as possible for the site that's going to be getting the product? Within food service, you do generically see a higher volume turnover compared to retail. So this is making sure that you're saying, right, I've got the perfect pack size for food service. I've thought about the world of food service again, and I've thought about the pack size and the case size that my product would work best in for this market. Have you thought about price point for food service? So what you can find in food service is there's going to be an extra layer of margin. Whereas in retail, you often sell direct to the retailer. You have to remember in food service, you may be selling to the distributor, and the distributor then sells that on to the gym, the coffee shop, whatever that end site is. So you've got a layer of margin and then another layer of margin. And that's something to consider. So food service is, it is a captive market. It's obviously a captive market, and people are prepared to pay slightly higher prices. If you're in somewhere like an adventure park or a gym or a coffee shop, you can be paying £10 for, a coffee and a breakfast in a Starbucks or a Costa coffee, but just making sure that that extra level of margin doesn't push your margin down too far, that you've built that price point to be able to withstand the world of food service. Have you looked at the pallet configurations? Have you thought about how many cases are on a layer, how many layers are on a pallet? You'll be hoping that you're going to be working on pallet quantities in the world of food service, making sure that you've got all that thought out. What's your minimum order quantity? It's a really important question in food service. If a distributor only wants to take a layer of a pallet or half a pallet, does that affect your cost price? Because that's something really important to consider. You've got to make sure that that can withstand those sort of differentials. So your product may actually go up in price if you're only sending a layer compared to a full pallet. If you're contract manufacturing, they might not be able to do a mixed case or a mixed layer or a mixed pallet. So just understanding your minimum order quantities and your pallet configurations. Understanding as well your capacity as a distributor. So if you've got a seasonal line and things really spike at Christmas and then really drop off, have you thought about those capacity fluctuations for your manufacturing site or your contract manufacturer? Because that's a really important point to consider as well. Transportation, like I said earlier, how are you getting that product to the distributor, and what is that? Is it a £60 pallet cost? Is it a £90 pallet cost? Thinking about how you're getting that product to the distributor and what those costs are going to be as well. And then obviously looking at certification, whether you've got SALSA or BRC, every distributor expects something different, but just having a think about what that might be from your point of view. We've got a few questions coming in. They're not specific to this slide, so what I'll do is I will save that and we can answer that one at the end for you. And then in terms of having a think, if you're ready, it's then having a think about distributor expectations as well. Like I said, are they going to charge you to store the product? What are their marketing promotions? What are they expecting in terms of a promotional mechanic? Do you have to pay to advertise in their brochure? Are there any launch costs involved? What are the costs once you're listed with the distributor? Because that's when the hard work starts. That's what we're going to come on to next. Are you prepared to put that cost in to be on the road, meeting with customers in Aberdeen, meeting with customers in Cornwall? Have you thought about the cost of having that operation running in terms of the food service operation from a field sales point of view? Have you looked into rebates and overriders? So there may be distributors who still work on rebates and overriders where you've got to give a percentage of what you turn over into an overall pot or into a marketing pot. Every distributor is very different here, and you may have some specific questions on this that I'm happy to take offline because people may not want to talk about costs and cost of goods and commercials. But have a think about rebates and overriders. Are these set in? And again, is that something that could start to bring your margin down? This slide really is built around having a think about the logistical side, but having a think about the cost involved with being distributing into that as well. We've had a question specifically on this. So somebody who's staying anonymous has said, what margins do distributors expect to make? Would offering them an increased margin be a good way to get your product listed instead of a competitor product? It's very difficult really to be able to influence the margin that distributors are wanting to make. This is actually, I thought there was a slide on that, but there's not. That's fine. Yeah, it's very difficult to influence the margin that distributors are wanting to make. There's some distributors that make 20 or 30%. There's some that make 40 or 50%. Again, then on the end customers, if you're looking at supplying into healthcare or education, they might be expecting about a 25% margin. But if you're selling into coffee shops, it could be 50, 60, 70% or more. What I always say, and this is it's a really difficult thing to do, but if you do have to work out margin and you don't know what the margin expectations are for certain customers or certain distributors, I would always roughly calculate it as a 40% margin for the distributor and a 40% margin for the end customer. There absolutely will be fluctuations within food service, and if you don't know what margins are going to be expected, for me, that's the only way that you're going to be able to come up with a number, is to go straight down the middle, erring slightly on the side of caution, and say, right, I'm going to build my price points and my commercials based on 40% margin for the distributor and 40% margin for that end customer. But like I said, there is no standard margin. Everybody expects a different cut within the world of food service. Again, then what I've done there is just put an interactive session just for you to have a look at, and just start to think and get those questions answered in your head. So we've talked there about the world of food service in terms of building your strategy, thinking about getting a listing, identifying what you need to be doing to getting a listing. That in itself is a long process. It's a tough process. It's time consuming. It's research driven. And now we're really going to come on to actually supporting the pillars of the account management side once you've won that business, because this is where the hard work starts. This is where the graft comes in. This is where you need to be thinking about, okay, I've won a food service business. I've won a distributor. What do I do to manage this distributor through? Such an important point for me, and such an important area of the world of food service, is actually activating the listing that you've got. It's working with the sales teams that the distributor have. So the good thing about food service is that the distributors that you'll be working with will have their own sales teams. They'll have business managers, business development managers, they'll have sector and subsector controllers, they'll have sales directors, all working with specific customers. You need to be working with them, and you need to be meeting customers. You are the expert on your product. Like I said, they may have 30 or 40,000 products listed within their portfolio. You are the expert on you, and actually getting out with the reps and the business managers and the account managers and actively working with the sales teams really is such an important part of the world of food service. So it's going to be about working hard and getting out in the field and meeting as many customers as possible, and getting on the side and being friendly with the sales teams, because if they see you as a friendly in the world of food service, it's going to put you at the forefront of their mind. So if they've got a new customer that opens and they're looking for a snack or a drink or a burger or whatever product that is, what makes you come to the forefront of that sales team's mind? It's going to be the people that have worked closely with them, that have put maybe incentives and sales incentives and promotions in place to help them do their job, that have done bespoke marketing literature, that are really working with the sales teams. It's putting you at the forefront of their mind. Most of the steps here are about putting you at the forefront of the distributor's mind. Drawing up a promotional plan, so making sure that you're understanding what promotions that you're going to run throughout the year with that distributor. Think about it. Think about the fact that if you're a seasonal product at Christmas, you may not want to promote at Christmas, because that's sales that you already would have been getting. So really have a think about a promotional plan. Build that promotional plan with the category team or the buying team at that distributor, and make sure that you map out those promotions, because that's going to make sure that you're getting a steadier stream of sales, maybe in the quieter months, putting a really strong promotion on, working on point one and going out with the sales teams, because during the busy months, you're going to be busy making the product and actually getting it shipped. In the quieter months, a great opportunity to get on promotion and work with the sales teams and continue to drive your product forward. Point three, this is a point that cannot be stated enough, is having a strong relationship with the buyer. I mean, I've spoken to buyers who have said that they've not heard from certain brands for 5, 6, 7, 8 months. And, I just can't believe that from a sales point of view. You have to have that strong relationship with the buyer. You've got to know information about your product and about your category, and about informing the buyer about updates and anything that you see as a really important piece of information to be able to feed back to the buyer, feed that back to them. Don't be seen as someone who pesters them, but stay in touch, make sure everything's going okay, and keep that regular contact. Make sure that twice a year that you'll be going in for joint business plan meetings where you're sitting down and really growing that partnership, you as a supplier, them as the buyer, working together to get your product sold within that distributor. This is such a key thing, and when often when it comes down to the crunch, exactly like we are now when we're having tough times, if you've got that strong relationship with the buyer, it's going to put you in a great place to be able to stay front of mind and continue on the path you were on. It's going to be the brands that haven't spoken to their buyer in months, or even close to a year, that the buyer's going to say, what am I really getting from this brand? What am I really getting from them in terms of working with us as a partnership? Stock levels, making sure you've got stock levels correct. This can seem quite a simple concept, but actually it's somewhere where a lot of people lose a little bit of sight once stock gets to the distributor. If you're going to be running a promotional month in August or September, for example, has the distributor got enough stock? Have you got enough stock ready to get to the distributor? And ask the distributor and ask their stock control teams, have you got enough stock listed within the distribution point? What you don't want to do is get 10 days into a promotion and find out that the distributor's out of stock and it's taking 5 or 6 days to get there. You may only have 2 or 3 promotions a year, and you may have wasted, a key week or 2 as part of that. So just making sure that you've considered stock levels both at the distributor and at the operator point of view. NPD and new product development. Are you leading the way in your category with an NPD? This is so important in terms of having new product development at the forefront of your mind. Do you know what's happening in your category? Who are the latest and innovative products within your category? Are you thinking about NPD? Are you working with your strong buyer relationships, with your strong sales teams relationships, to actually understand what they're looking for as a distributor, or even down to the end customer, the gym, the healthcare site, the restaurant, the hotel? What are they looking for from a new product, and can you be the distributor to do that? So always having new products and new ideas, and being a master within your category at the forefront of your mind. Understanding your competition links really well into point 5 as well. What are your competition doing? When are they promoting? What months are they promoting? Which distributors are they listed in? And if so, why? Is there something that you're missing out on there? Understanding your competition inside and out, looking at their social media, looking at where they're listed, thinking about, right, why are they doing that? Thinking outside the box, not just being blinkered to your specific product, but actually widening that opportunity there for thinking outside the box. And it's been stated here, but really working with the end customer as well. If you've won that hospital, you've won that restaurant, that hotel, really staying close to them. This is just really finishing that circle. It's a 360-degree approach in terms of you've got the relationship with the buyer, the sales team, all of the distribution and stock control teams, and then that end customer as well. So you are all over the work that you've done and the hard work you've done to get the listing, and you're all over then managing that account as well. I've put this here again as an interactive session for you. And what I like to do here is this is almost a summary of everything we've gone through. And what I say here is just say that you've got that initial proposition over to a buyer, and then your phone rings and it's the buyer and they've got some questions for you. This is a really good role play to have a think about. Are you really 100% ready to be able to have these buyer conversations? So these are just some generic questions that buyers have asked me, or the brands that we're working with in the past. Tell me about your products in 30 seconds. Who's your main competition? Why are you different compared to what's in the marketplace? Talking about promotions, would you be able to do a 20% promotion? What sectors do you fit in? This is important for me in terms of how many units are in a case, because I've got to manage our stock levels. When can you launch? These are just a selection of questions, but again, this just moves you to the next level of understanding in the world of food service. It shows that you know everything about your product, everything about your category, and just shows that professionalism when you're coming across to a buyer. And what I found working with startups, this is really important because, it's probably an area that you've not really worked in before, and you're not an expert in this space, but this just allows you to have a think about some of the areas that may actually come up here. So coming to the end of this now, just a few key points later for you if you're going through this. What makes a buyer tick pre-listing? It's doing that job for them. It's having that customer interest, having a really attractive proposition, having your food service strategy built that you may want to talk through with the distributor, and knowing their business inside and out. What then makes them tick once you've got the listing? It's going to be sales. It's going to be about going through those account management points and managing those effectively and bringing in the sales, making sure that you've got a strong promotional plan for the year and really knowing your category inside and out. That sounds easy, right? No, it's not. So the world of food service is a complex world. None of anything that we've gone through today is an easy process. If it was, there'd be a lot more brands out there doing what we do. It's a challenging world. There's a lot of competition. Distributors have a lot of product. It takes a lot of time to be getting this customer interest in managing and developing, making sure that your price point fits. But what this presentation and hopefully, thinking about building your food service strategy will do is just breaking the whole process down into manageable chunks, from building the strategy to identifying who you want to work with, how you're going to work with them, drawing up your margins and costs and promotional plans, just breaking the whole process down step by step and saying, right, I feel like I'm confident. I feel like I'm ready to really go for this. We're in a situation where we are now. A lot of people have said to me, should I still be doing this during this crisis? Should I still be doing this during this crisis? There's no magic solution to the issue that we're in. The key at the moment, and what we're doing with the brands that we're working with, is building this food service strategy. It's making sure that you're getting this ready. So whether it's 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks, whenever we start to see some form of normality back in the marketplace. And I think, in my opinion, it's going to be when we start getting some dates around things like we've seen in Germany yesterday, where they're giving specific dates on when pubs can open and when schools may reopen. I think that's when we'll start to see some normality. But this is really about getting your plan and getting that strategy built. No stone unturned and identifying who you want to speak to, getting on LinkedIn if you want to work with Hilton or Marriott or David Lloyd or NHS, getting onto LinkedIn, identifying who those right people are to start having those conversations with. Start getting your head around getting samples ready for buyers or sample packs for, people when they're back. And just really thinking outside the box. A few other little points here in terms of things that you may be doing already, in terms of direct to consumer, home delivery, local and independent shops, people that are still serving food and drink. If you've got surplus stock at the moment, you've got to be thinking about ways to be able to get that sold. Can you give free stock to the NHS, or can you be working with maybe local shops who are converting into little retail outlets? There is no magic answer to the world that we're in, but it is going to be about thinking outside of the box. If you've got any listings now and you're supposed to be having listings over the next few weeks or months and you've not heard from the buyer, just make sure that you're touching base. It'd be surprising if some of those listings are happening. So just be managing expectations and actually have a plan. So, okay, we can't launch now, but I think there's a fantastic opportunity to launch in in August or September. So if you had launches planned or you had opportunities planned, just start thinking about when could we be pushing those opportunities to. I'm more than happy to speak to brands after this, whether that's today, tomorrow, or next week, in terms of specific ways that their products and their brands could be overcoming this, and working through the COVID-19 situation. And quite a lot of it's personal in terms of costs or in furloughing and staff numbers. So more than happy to take that offline from here. Coming to the end, then I've put a few highlights here for you to think about. Again, it's the world of food service is about researching and planning, having that ready to go proposition, and really managing that account well. I've put my details here for you, so I'm quite active on LinkedIn, and you've got my email address and my contact number there. So, like I said, it's been a pleasure to be invited to talk a real whistle-stop tour on the world of food service. But more than happy to go into detail with any brands who want to talk about that after. I think Chloe's now going to run a Q&A session, I believe.
Thank you very much, Dan. That was filled with some great advice for our audience. Let's answer some of the questions we've had from the live chat. First of all, there's a few questions that are quite similar, so I'm going to kind of bunch them together just so you can answer. So are distributors looking to onboard any new startups in the current climate, or is it bad time to contact them? Another has asked, are category buyers still working? Is it worth contacting them now or waiting? And then another one, if you don't already have customers ready to go, is it worth contacting the distributor?
Yeah. So I would say that listings in their current format right now, as in if you were about to list in March, April, or May, obviously speak to a specific distributor if you were about to, but I'd be very surprised if that's happening. If you're a new product and you want to be working towards getting a listing for April, May, June, again, I'd be very surprised if that's happening. They're pushing everything back towards autumn and winter from the discussions that I've had. But saying that, it is, you've got to be extremely sensitive about the way that you're doing this, but it's not a terrible time to be making an introduction. What I would say is that this needs to be as soft as possible. It could be about the fact that you have excess stock because of the current situation, and you just wanted to see if they wanted to try some at home while they're working from home at the moment, as soft as possible. If you're putting together this food service strategy and you've got this 4 or 5 page master, presentation that we've talked about, which is so important, I would be holding back off that until we're out of lockdown for that one. That's, we've just got to be as sensitive about this as we can. A lot of food service distributors are working with the NHS at the moment in terms of making sure that the NHS has got enough food and drink stock to be supplied. I've been speaking to buyers continually over the past few weeks, speaking about launches for August and September for some of the brands that we're working with. So those conversations are still happening, but it's just doing it in a very sensitive way, almost offering them some stock because you've got excess stock for them to try the product at home with their family. Don't take that hard sales tone that you may have taken elsewhere, really.
Okay, the next question is from Filippo. We're building a startup in this field. What is your advice on brand identity? We're trying to get the right niche, but do not know what our customers truly care about in terms of values.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of really, identifying your brand identity, social media is a really important way to do that. Making sure that you've got really succinct social media platforms and you're looking at who's following you on those social media platforms. If you've got money to invest, there are companies out there such as Viper, which is spelled VYPR, who do some fantastic work in terms of working with startups and SMEs to identify who their market is. They have a sort of database of thousands and thousands of consumers, and they'll be able to put really specific questions out. They're even able to put shots of images and branding and brand packs to get feedback on that as well. So if you don't have any budget to invest in this process, it's going to be about doing that yourself through social media. Personally, I believe if you do have some money to invest, then there are organizations that will be able to help you with that. If you're getting your branding designed by an external agency, then they will help you with that brand identity as well. But a sort of starting point for the world of food service in terms of brand identity, think about that big slide that I put out at the start. What sectors do you fit in and where do you fit in? That should give you a bit of an idea. Actually, I think we really appeal to gyms and universities, but not so much to healthcare and primary education. You're already starting in a sort of broad way to start to filter out who your market is there.
Okay, great. The next one is come through as anonymous. It says, do you think it's wise to get listed with a few caterers or as many as you can to get the most of business?
Yeah, so I definitely wouldn't say as many as you can. If you're working with a regional distributor, you really don't want to work with 2 regional distributors in a certain area. They're just going to be stepping on each other's toes. You're going to be making the relationships with the sales teams really difficult because they'll be competing against somebody else for the product that they're trying to sell. So there are enough regions within the UK to get a good amount of business from working with a regional distributor within Wales or Scotland or Northeast, Northwest, Southwest, Southeast, Midlands, London. If there's 2 that are spread apart within that region, you could consider it. So if you were looking at Scotland as a region, which food service often does, you could be looking at the north and the south as quite a large and vast area, but you need to be very careful that you're not basically competing against yourself and it just becomes a bit of a price war. If you're working with national distributors, then absolutely. I've got brands that we work with who have got listings in Bidfood and Breaks because they have such a different customer base. They do absolutely have some customers that are the same, but they do have a lot of customers, especially within hotels and within contract catering, that are different. So wouldn't worry too much on the national approach, but it's absolutely a concern when you're looking at the regional approach.
Okay, the next question is from Hannah. Is this a time for us to adapt and change our systems, or is it more of a temporary measure to see us through until the post-Brexit climate?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a very, very strange time for the food and drink economy at the moment. We're having to go through, we are smack bang in the middle of the effects of COVID-19. We're then going to have the hangover of COVID-19, and then we don't know what's happening with Brexit at the moment either. The EU have come out and said it's going to be down to Britain to push this sort of rest period past the end of this year if we need to. We're in an extremely uncertain place. What I would say is you can only plan for the now. I Personally, I would be planning on the recovery from COVID-19 rather than thinking about Brexit too much at this point. Brexit is still a huge unknown in terms of what that's going to look like. So at the moment, I would be planning for coming out the back of COVID-19 and getting this strategy ready and getting ready to go on all cylinders. We don't know what the social distancing measures are going to be, but I'm sure there's many people out there like me who are pretty excited to get back out there and start using our pubs and our restaurants and our coffee shops again. So I would be really building your strategy in 3-month blocks and really wouldn't look at Brexit in that, but absolutely be looking at the recovery from COVID-19 at the moment.
The next question has come through anonymous. How do you identify the correct category buyer, as within the big players, the procurement team is vast and wide?
Yep, it is, and it's very difficult if you don't know who that person is. There's a few ways you can do it. LinkedIn is a really good tool. If you search the name of the distributor, the name of your category, and then buyer, quite often I've done that with distributors that I haven't worked with before, and their information is there. If it isn't there, maybe pop a message to a buyer on LinkedIn and say, I'm a startup. I'm coming out of the back of COVID-19. We're really keen to get this going, get this moving. Could you let me know who the correct buyer is? Try and call the reception of the distributor and say hi. Explain the same situation. Just be using those tools. And if not, then speak to somebody in the industry. Speak to a sort of larger brand who are, quite a lot of large brands at the moment, like Snaffling Pig and Huel, who are multi-million-pound brands. They're helping startups. Pop one of those founders a message on LinkedIn and say, look, could you help me with 1 or 2 contacts? I'm trying to build up my network.
Fantastic. And we've got time for one last question, and it says, we have got listed with a few large caterers, but they've said we need to go out there and win clients. We're finding it difficult to find the right person within clients, for example, RBS. What do you suggest?
Yeah, so in terms of a lot of the banks and in terms of contract catering, it's a very, very private part of the industry. LinkedIn, again, is a fantastic tool to be able to identify. They often call them general managers within those contract catering in banks. So looking at the bank and maybe searching the term, catering general manager and finding what comes up, or picking up the phone and asking who that is. Unfortunately, distributors can be quite reluctant to share that information. I do understand why, because there'd be so many suppliers trying to approach that specific customer. There are sectors that are easier than the contract catering and the banking sector to start to build your portfolio, such as universities. If you think you fit into universities, there's 180 major universities in the UK that do catering operations. I can assure you most of those catering managers are on LinkedIn. So contract catering and banks is a very tough place to be if you don't know the correct contacts, but try those sort of methods first. But it could be that you want to build contacts elsewhere first, and maybe have that as a sort of target later down the line, really.
Okay, that's all we've got time for today. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm sure our audience will agree that was incredibly beneficial for all those entrepreneurs out there battling through the current situation. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's webinar, then we'll be sending out a replay shortly on our social media channels. Our next webinar in the Business COVID-19 series takes place tomorrow, Friday the 17th of April at 2 p.m. and we'll be joined by Lord Billamoria, founder of Cobra Beer, who will be talking about the support from the government and the road ahead. So if you're in need for any government advice during COVID-19, Lord Billamoria will be able to assist with what is available for businesses, if you are eligible, and how to claim it. If you haven't already, you can register for this webinar at freshbusinessthinking.haysummit.com or using the link in the comments. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again to you, Dan.
Thank you, everybody.